Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids. I'm going to have some extra music here for some reasons. Let's just chill that out. There we go. And welcome to sorry, I got thrown there. Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to the Daily Beaver Morning Show, Season 5, Episode number 673. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and not with me this morning is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. And I do not know why at the exact moment, so I'm going to guess, again, probably insomnia, bad night's sleep, and he is still getting some beauty rest. Big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. We have a short but sweet one for you today because, as many of you know, if you have been following uh, the show, today me and the twins, one fish, two fish, or bluefish, redfish, as they're maybe known sometimes, are going off to the hospital for my orthopedic consult to see whether or not the air cast comes off in 2 weeks, or whether or not they'll have to break my foot again to stick some pins in it in order to be able to fix it. Fingers crossed that everything will go smoothly. It seems that my consult is so far away from the date that I did make the break because they do consults with triage principles in place, and I was not triaged as a high priority, which means probably the break was in such a way, as I was told, that it probably could heal very well on its own without any surgical intervention. So I am going to keep my eyes, fingers, arms, toes, and legs, so you know I mean it, crossed, so for that to be the case. It's going to be short and sweet today. Perhaps I might be able to come back later today and do a second part. So it might be a double Beaver Thursday, but more to come on that. I'm just not sure when I'll be back from the appointment, so I can't necessarily schedule a time just yet. But stay tuned. I will definitely announce it on our socials if we're doing a second one today. Uh, I see here Kid Linda M, the original and the best, had a birthday yesterday. Happy belated birthday, dear one. I hope it was as fun and fabulous as you are. All right. And I hope you ate all the cake, all of it. Because for your birthday, cake is both calorie and guilt free by decree of your Royale with cheese, Queen Beaver. Hope you enjoyed the show yesterday. A little break from our regular fare, but a little constant doom and gloom is not good for the spiritual diet. So we switched it up. How's my mental health doing today? Well, how's yours doing today, kids and cubs? Number one, mine doing better this morning. unfortunately had a little bit of a dip last evening. Um, one of those moments that made me call the day a little early. So around 9:30 or so, I was like, "Yeah, that's it. I'm declaring this day over," and I went to bed. But as often is the case, a good night's sleep solves a lot of things. So I am chipper and optimistic and happy this morning, and as always, pleased to be with you and sharing some time with you. Today, as I mentioned, it's going to be a very, very quick recap of what's happened at the G7. And like I said, perhaps more to come later. Not sure if I thanked our founding sponsors, but big thank you to the Peppermaster, the Miss V Mysteries from Corbin Food. Let's try that again. The Peppermaster, the Miss V Mysteries from Corbin Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Had this thing that happened where my tongue didn't leave the back of my teeth. I was saying that. It was like, ah, sometimes all the parts don't work simultaneously. Let's just put it that way. Mm. All right, kids and cubs. So, to get into it, the G7 came and went. Overall, it's a success for Canada and the organization. Um, it's kind of a low bar in one way when you decide that one of the measures of success is whether or not we were able to contain uh, the toddler, and essentially we were. Yes and no, because as predicted, uh, I said expect a tantrum at some point, and while he was here, there wasn't, and when he left, everybody from the United States side seemed to make it very, very clear that he had had a great day, even signed a trade deal with the United States. However, kits and cubs, because um, Mr. Trump is such a brave person and such a big fighter and stand-up kind of guy. Well, and he was unfortunately up to his usual tricks, sadly, and he was on his plane, I guess, and well, decided to delve back into some of his greatest hits, if you would like to call it that way. But yeah, it didn't take him very long until he unleashed one of these, talking again about how Canada would get a much better deal if it becomes the first for 51st American state, with the cost of joining the Golden Dome now not 61 billion but 71 billion, I guess. So, um, and then like threatening, that there would be like even more sanctions, not sanctions, sorry. No, you can call them sanctions for all intents and purposes, but more tariffs if we didn't agree to a deal super, super quick. Uh, I guess on his schedule, I guess that's his negotiating tactic. And then Canada laughed and Canada yawned. Because the most insulting part about this is not that he did it, is that he didn't come up with anything fresh. Just the same old stale 51st real estate, "Hey, have I got a deal for you?" type thing. "Join us. You can be our cherished 51st state." Well, I mean, we saw what's going on with California. We see how Trump cherishes his states. So, he's also removing, backing out of FEMA after the current, hurricane season. So, people have to wait till next year to find out, "Oh, yeah, that's why we had FEMA." And then try to build it back again. Um, right, this guy, you know, like at least he could have complimented us or flattered us by taking 5 minutes to come up with a new line. But his act hasn't changed much. So this is what we get. Of course, he did this on Tuesday, Taco Tuesday. Go figure. I guess, and he did it when he was on his side of the border, so I guess it was Chicken Taco Tuesdays, wouldn't it? Anyway, we let him yammer on, do what he does, because we're all ready. All these 90 deals in 90 days that he says he wants to do, and he's only got certain amount of days left, fewer than 20. Uh, we're actually signing deals. So, you know, whatever at this point, right? It's like, yeah, Trump 51st did it again. Oh, yeah, blah, blah, whatever. That's what he does. So it's not going well at home. He needs to look tough. So that was purely for domestic consumption. We shouldn't really bother ourselves with that one at all. Um, there is no reason for us to rush into anything. As Prime Minister Carney keeps on saying, we will take all the time necessary to make a deal, but not a moment more. That, in this case, um, means that we do have the luxury of dragging our heels a little bit. We're not rushing into a deal at the speed and on the agenda of Mr. Trump because, well, deadlines have a way of sharpening the mind, number one. So the closer we wait to whatever deadline he wants before we start to seriously start putting some stuff down, the more advantage there is for us because he'll be willing to give up more if he really wants a deal for that date. And number two, given that he wants 90 deals with 90 countries, and right now, if we believe him, he's got one with the UK, which he claimed was with the European Union. But of course, the UK is not part of the European Union, and he should know that because he was a big Brexit booster. But, you know, Swiss cheese brain. So he forgot. Um, so assuming that's one, he's still got 89 to go. Um, there is no first mover advantage with this man. I'm sure the more desperate he gets to actually have some deals to point to and announce, the more he's going to be willing to give up to get it. So why would we go first and then watch everybody after us get better deals? Let's lie in wait a little bit and see what the little fucker has to give up and what he's willing to give up, and then make a deal. So, yeah, I have a feeling that we will not be working on his schedule, and he's going to throw a couple more fits before we actually sign anything. So that's a him problem, not an us problem. Other things, however, happened. While he was away on the second day, as predicted, everybody else kind of breathed a little easier and the day went smoother. Nobody was walking on eggshells. There were even reports in the press about people saying that was the kind of mood and the vibe there, which is kind of to be expected. There was some disappointment, of course, because everybody that had showed up for day two, like, for example, Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, who probably was looking to talk to Trump, was not able to do that. By the way, in a major flex, Claudia Sheinbaum flew Air Canada to come here. Gracias, presidente. uh, so yeah, that was kind of nice. Um, uh, Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, was not all that upset because there's a big NATO summit next week, and says, we've got extensive time to talk scheduled for there. But anybody else had come specifically for that, I'm pretty sure Volodymyr Zelensky was not sad at all that Trump was not present. Of course, with whatever commitments we are making to Ukraine, Trump, and the United States wanted to water that down somewhat. There was a bit of miscommunication because it seems that there was some early reports stating that there was going to be some joint statement on Ukraine from all the G7, and then there was not going to be one. And somebody had to remind some people that no, there was no joint communique. Right, there was only going to be issue related statements, and it's not like everybody doesn't know that Trump is not all in on Ukraine. So, um, the news that somehow there was going to be some uh, bigger statement that really included everyone, that was going to do a whole lot more, was a miscommunication of some kind. And those are the types of things that, again, still relatively new government, still the inner offices and all that kind of stuff. being put together. But you want to pay attention to that kind of stuff because those were mistakes that should not happen. So that needed a little bit of tidying up. So to look at things, I was reading some stuff because there was a lot of things going on in various domains. And if you follow global news, Sean Boynton had a pretty good recap there. So I'm going to read this into the record for you. The article is called G Leaders Agree on AI Adoption, Critical Materials, but Not Ukraine. Um, a little let's say the people who write the stories don't necessarily choose the headlines. The headline could have been a little more precise because there was agreement on Ukraine, even with the United States, but the United States just didn't want to go as far. So, what Prime Minister Carney probably said in his closing remarks in the chair statement was stronger than the actual statement on Ukraine that included everyone. But the statement on Ukraine specifically did was from all seven, I believe. So, according to Mr. Boynton, leaders of the G7 have reached agreements on a human-centric approach to artificial intelligence adoption, fighting transnational oppression, and creating standards-based markets for critical minerals, but not on holding Russia to account for its war in Ukraine or securing a ceasefire in the Middle East. The seven world leaders wrapped up their summit in Alberta Tuesday without a unified communique on shared views, which has been the standard after past gatherings. But I add here, was never, ever the intent, and that was telegraphed well before the meetings took place. Rather, the summit produced a series of joint statements on issues ranging from artificial intelligence and quantum computing to migrant smuggling and transnational repression. A wider group of signatories, which includes Australia, India, and South Korea, are committing to work together to invest in responsible critical mineral projects. Australia, India, Mexico, South Korea, and South Africa also signed on with the G7 to a wildfire charter that calls for cooperation to prevent, fight, and recover from devastating fires. The G7, and when it comes to that particular statement, uh, the statement had no mention of climate change, again, because of the insistence of the United States. But we all know the relationship between climate change and forest fires, and for the very purpose of actually coming up with an agreement to fight the fires once they happen. Um, a statement on climate change is not particularly necessary for for that to happen. So it would be nice that it was there, to signal something, but if that's not there, doesn't necessarily affect what the actual response in terms of, you know, being able to share resources to fight those fires would be. Because once they happen, you still have to deal with them, whether or not you agree on the cause or not. The G7 leaders released a short statement Monday night calling for de escalation of hostilities in the Middle East in response to continued fighting between Israel and Iran. There was no final agreement on the war in Ukraine or a collective effort to pressure Moscow into ceasefire negotiations. Canada and other allies announced new Russian sanctions and aid for Ukraine on Tuesday, but the US did not follow suit. A senior Canadian government official told reporters on Background that the US sought weaker language on Ukraine and Russia than what other members proposed, resulting in no joint statement being issued. The official said it was challenging to get the US to agree on a statement on Ukraine, in part because it's trying to negotiate a ceasefire or peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. They added Canada planned to use the stronger language agreed to by the other leaders in its closing chair statement, which does not require consensus and will be released late Tuesday, or was released late Tuesday, because I'm going back in time when I'm reading this article here. US President Donald Trump left the summit a day early to deal with the escalating conflict between Iran and Israel. He told reporters aboard Air Force One on his way back to Washington that, quote, "We did everything I had to do at the G7." Uh huh. Sure, you did, darling. Sure. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Trump agreed to work towards a new economic and security agreement between Canada and the US within the next 30 days, the Prime Minister's office said after the two leaders met. Not sure how that stands anymore, given Trump's statement afterwards in the plane saying that, there's going to be more tariffs if you don't. And, you know, we're not particularly impressed by that statement, those statements anymore, those types of threats. They may have worked the first few times, but now he just says them. And again, we take them seriously, but we don't jump. So whether or not that 30 and plus Trump says a lot of things and consistently always changes his mind. So, uh, if his shorts were knotted and riding high for some reason yesterday when he was saying that, maybe it has something to do with Netanyahu defying him on the on the world stage and therefore humiliating and embarrassing him. Mm, tea tastes so good. But whatever it was, um, not our problem as much as he would like to make it ours. French President Emmanuel Macron said Carney fulfilled his mission as G7 host to preserve the unity of the multilateral organization. Quote, we shouldn't ask the Canadian presidency to resolve every issue on Earth today. That would be unfair. But he held the group together, said Macron, who will host the G7 next year. And perhaps we had some signs that Macron was becoming the new Trudeau in the eyes of Donald Trump, because with regard to the president having to leave to deal with situation in the Middle East. Macron was on the record as saying that Trump was leaving to work on some type of ceasefire, to which Trump later responded something bitchy about Macron and stating like that he was not going to do like the ceasefire thing. To which, of course, Macron then, when asked about it, said, "Well, he was the one that was talking about ceasefire in the room all the time, and changes of mind of the Americans are not my problem." So I was like, "Oh, okay." So, yeah, now that Macron is the dean of the G7s, it looks like, Trump, and of course, sharing similar qualities to Trudeau, youngish, good looking, all that kind of stuff, nice hair. Well, yeah, maybe, Macron has decided that, the president of France is the new punching bag now. So, we'll see. But yes, he tried, to internationally embarrass Macron with that type of statement. And Macron was like, "Well, if he changes his mind, that's not my responsibility." Sometimes I love the French. Actually, I frequently love the French, but sometimes I particularly love the French. That sort of like attitude every now and then. So it's good stuff. Continuing on, because there was a lot that was done, and this is one thing. There was a hot take by Andrew Coyne, basically stating, it was totally well. I'm not sure if he was stating specifically that it was totally unsuccessful, but you know, given that everything hadn't been resolved specifically with Trump. Uh, Andrew Coyne uh, decided that he was going to be unimpressed and basically allow that one little segment to determine that everything or that the summit itself wasn't really a success and that not a lot got done, which is not true in any way, shape, or form. That would not be an accurate assessment. There was a lot of things that have gotten done. Um, his specific statement was, "So exactly zero progress made. What a useful summit." No, we made tons of progress because the usefulness of the summit was not based alone on whether or not the human jello, that is the mercurial mercenary of Mar-a-Lago, could be nailed to a wall. He can't, right? So yeah, basically, Andrew Coyne saw the statement that Trump was making about 51st state again and said, "Oh, so no progress made." No, no, we made tons of progress. We made tons of progress. That's because the progress is not only him. So, yeah, Andrew Coyne is this weird character for me because, you know, he was never hesitant to bash the liberals when Trudeau was there, and he likes to bash liberals. But right now, the liberals have a leader who's now the prime minister who's a little more in line with what Andrew Coyne typically states, because our prime minister is pretty much more progressive conservative than the actual traditional liberal. So Andrew Coyne is sometimes caught uh, having to agree with the prime minister, although it seems to be begrudgingly and reluctantly. But as soon as he sees an opportunity to say, "Oh well, you got nothing done," he takes it. Uh, I would just like a little consistency from Mr. Coin. That would be nice. And something other than, I don't know. I don't know what his metric or his yardstick is in anymore. Like I said, his positions are so wildly inconsistent and swinging. It's hard to figure out where it is that he stands on anything. Um, I personally don't think it's good for his brand, but you know, again, that's for him to decide. I guess what he wants his brand to be here. So, moving on with other things that took place here with regards to artificial intelligence, the artificial intelligence statement is the most detailed from the G7 leaders to date. It promises a quote, human centric approach to adopting the quickly advancing technology, quote, to grow prosperity, benefit societies, and address pressing global challenges, particularly to drive economic efficiency and boost national security. While the statement said the G7 leaders recognize the risk AI poses to job security, business models, and energy security, it says governments, quote, must seize the potential of AI in our public sectors to drive efficiency and better serve our publics, and help companies do the same to scale their businesses. The leaders said that they will launch an AI adoption roadmap to build on past G7 ministerial agreements on adopting AI, quote, in the world of work and, quote, build resilient future workforces by preparing workers for AI driven transitions, including, quote, developing a voluntary compendium of best practices. It does not say how it plans to prevent wide scale job losses that some AI creators and innovators have warned could be unleashed by widespread unregulated adoption. The statement says G7 countries will work to address AI's heavy energy consumption and increase access to AI in developing countries. Quote, we recognize that increased AI adoption will place growing pressure on our energy grids, produce negative externalities, and have implications for energy security, resilience, and affordability, the statement said. At the same time, AI can be harnessed to promote energy innovation and bolster the resilience and reliability of our energy systems. The statement said member countries also, quote, hear the concerns of emerging market and developing country partners about the challenges they face in building resilient AI ecosystems, including the risks of disruption and exclusion from today's technological revolution. It said Canada, which holds the G7 presidency this year, will host a series of, quote, rapid solution labs to, quote, develop innovative and scalable solutions to the barriers we face in adopting AI in the public sector. Government ministers will be tasked with exploring strategic investments for accelerating public sector AI adoption in transformative ways in Canada. Prime Minister Carney and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced a separate agreement on further AI collaboration last weekend ahead of the summit after Starmer visited with Carney in Ottawa on his way to Kananaskis. The seven countries also issued, quote, a common vision for emerging quantum technologies, committing them to promoting, quote, public and private investment in quantum science and technology. With regard to wildfire prevention, migrant smuggling, an agreement dubbed the Kananaskis Wildfire Charter outlines steps that all G7 countries and five non G7 members intend to take on wildfire prevention, research collaboration, and community rebuilding efforts. At last year's summits, leaders agreed to prevent and manage the negative impacts of wildfires, but did not outline specific plans for doing so, and committed to reversing deforestation by 2030. The declaration comes as Canada battles yet another devastating wildfire season, and almost 1 year after a wildfire ripped through Jasper, an Alberta town 250 kilometers from where the leaders were meeting. The G7 leaders signed onto a statement pledging to tackle migrant smuggling. The statement said that the G7, quote, will explore, consistent with our legal systems, the potential use of sanctions to target criminals involved in migrant smuggling and human trafficking operations from countries where those activities emanate. A separate statement declared the leaders are, quote, deeply concerned by growing reports of transnational repression, defined in the statement as an aggressive form of foreign interference in which states or their proxies try to intimidate, harass, harm, or coerce people outside their borders. The statement condemns all forms of transnational repression, which can include a range of activities from assassination to cyber surveillance. It calls for member countries to report on transnational repression in the G7 Rapid Response Mechanism public reports and develop a framework to cooperate to counter such activities. Now, kits and cubs, if we are talking transnational repression, particularly with within the context of the G7, well, we can't do that without talking about Prime Minister Modi of India now, can we? right? So he came to town, and it would seem that there was an agreement, at least, between Canada and India to designate new high commissioners and restore regular diplomatic services to citizens in both countries following a meeting between both leaders. The Prime Minister's office confirmed the move in a readout of the meeting on Tuesday. If you remember, Canada expelled 6 Indian diplomats and consular officials last fall following news that law enforcement had linked agents of the Indian government to a targeted campaign against Canadian citizens. India expelled the acting Canadian High Commissioner in New Delhi and 5 other Canadian diplomats last fall in response, and the posts have remained vacant since. Um, when it comes to Modi, I keep on saying it. I know that it is necessary to have him here because of where India stands economically. I am aware and accept that India has been at the past several G7 meetings in a row, and that it would have been like a needle scratch on a record to not invite him this time on the global scene. Whereas for Canada, we probably would have been quite fine without having him there. But so I understand it was necessary. You can't make me like it, though. However, when it comes to diplomatic relations, this probably is a good move and a move that is in our interests in the sense that when things go wrong, it's always better to be able to have an ambassador that you can call in and chew out and send them back with a message than not, because that's our situation with Iran at the moment. And as you know, when Iran shot down that airplane on which many Canadian citizens were on board and a certain number of permanent residents. We did not, because we did not have a presence in Iran, thanks to Stephen Harper having severed our diplomatic relations. We had to go through other nations in order to try to get some cooperation on that. So, as awful as a nation is, severing diplomatic ties entirely is probably not in our nation's best interest because stuff can happen where you need those lines of communication and you don't have them. And often having to go through intermediaries is far from as effective. So, on that, that was probably a good thing, even though we are not particularly fond of the current administration. India has been singled out by Canadian intelligence officials as a prolific perpetrator of foreign interference in Canada, including transnational repression, an issue the G7 leaders singled out in one of several joint statements issued at their summit. As the bilateral meeting began, Carney said it was a great honor to host Modi at the G7. That probably did not deserve to be there. It's not the same way as, it's a great honor to receive you is not the same type of statement as you're a transformational president. There's no way to interpret great honor as a bit of phrase that can be taken two ways, positively or negatively. Quote, it's a testament to the importance of your country, to your leadership, and to the importance of the issues that we look to tackle together, Carney said, noting that includes the energy transition, the future of AI, and the fight against transnational repression and terrorism. Speaking through a translator, Modi said he thinks joining the G7 was a great opportunity to serve the global good. Quote, I believe that India-Canada relations are extremely important and India and Canada should work together, Modi said, noting that both countries stand for democratic values. Yeah, but maybe us just a little bit more. Modi called the meeting with Carney excellent in a post on social media. So that is a switch from the administration there that usually doesn't pass on an opportunity to slag us at some point. But Narendra Modi specifically said, had an excellent meeting with Prime Minister Mark Carney, complimented him and the Canadian government for successfully hosting the G7 summit. India and Canada are connected by a strong belief in democracy, freedom, and rule of law. Prime Minister Carney and I look forward to working closely to add momentum to the India Canada friendship. Areas like trade, energy, space, clean energy, critical minerals, fertilizers, and more offer immense potential in this regard. Yeah. uh, One of the reasons we are particularly interested in India with regard to clean energy is that a 2025 World Bank report noted that India has made a $50 billion investment in clean energy potential, which could align with Canada's expertise in critical minerals and fertilizers to counterbalance US economic influence. So there is a portion of this that, of course, is um, trying to squeeze the United States out a little bit. And again, if we're playing the very, very long game, countries last, but leaders don't. So this is probably Canada taking the long term view, playing the long game. That yes, we don't particularly like the administration right now, but at some point we're going to have a better one. And it would be good to have these deals and agreements in place for the day when that comes. A friend of mine named Judy, who's a works in psychology and all that kind of stuff, often presents situations as, do you want to wait until they invent color movies before you buy a color TV? Or do you want to be the first to buy a color TV so that way when color movies come around, you're the first who will be able to get to see them? This would be an example of the second, right? Setting up these agreements while we still have some tensions with this administration because and doing that is buying the color TV for when this administration eventually goes out the door and when that comes in, one that hopefully will be more friendly to Canada. Well, then we'll be the first to be able to watch the color movie. And once again, as you heard, kids and cubs, I dropped the mouse. So please excuse me while I discreetly and elegantly attempt to go fetch it and come back relatively quickly. There we go. And no points on the elegance. As you saw, I bopped my head against the mic. Well, c'est la vie. All right. So those are some of the main elements that have come out of the meeting. Uh, Overall, positive. Um, like I said, there'll be some mixed emotions and mixed feelings with regard to some of the guests. Um, there, from what I gather from the talks with India, uh, at least publicly, there's not much being said, and even statements to the effect that certain topics may not have been really all that discussed. Uh, and those are topics that there's a lot of people would have loved to have seen discussed. So, my one concern with regard to our prime minister at the moment, and I'm not saying that this is a thing, but it's an element for vigilance. Um, he's very, very, very smart. There's a lot of IQ going on. There is a lot of EQ in the sense of having to knowing how bigwigs on the big stage like to behave because he's been in the room in the background, um, not trying to pull the spotlight when he was the Governor of Bank of Canada, and knowing how to manage and massage that, knowing how to work it in the boardroom. But there may be a blind spot and a lack of EQ with regard. Um, how would I put it? To how people feel about necessary things that need to be done that do not make us happy or at least push our skepticism button. So, uh, yes, while all the stuff that he says about India is true about being an economic player and, where maybe lots of activity of the future is, and yes, while it is true that currently of the United States, China, and India India is the government that is the least difficult to deal with, and still seems to adhere to some democratic principles, if not all of them. Um, there seems to be an overall lack of sensitivity to people who would have an issue with that. And that is something that is also manifesting with the manner in which he's handling bills C2, C4, and C5. Um, there are people that have some concerns, and whether or not they are legitimate concerns, and I would say that a lot of them, there's some foundation. They're not without reason, not without foundation. Um, he seems to be bulldozing rather quickly. I understand his statement saying that we have to do things we never dreamed possible at speeds we have never done before. But that doesn't mean that you can just say, now that I've said that, we're going to run roughshod over everyone who disagrees or who might have a concern. Uh, there seems to be a little bit of that going on. And while he is still in the honeymoon phase, and those things are not getting the attention or the amount of press that they might deserve, that is an attitude once the honeymoon is over that can turn around and bite one very, very, very hard, very quickly. Um, the prime minister, in his effort to do things at speeds never seen before, um, might be creating a few situations that could trip him up. The indigenous community is really not happy with C5, and they can stall projects. Uh, there were Sukh Dhaliwal, who spoke to the prime minister about what was going on with India. I got time to speak with him, um, but pretty much emerged from that meeting with, "I hear your concerns, but we're doing this anyway." There are people that have some concerns with C2 and C4, and um, he's just plowing ahead and invoking closure on debates. When people are asking, like, could we like sit another week or another two? There was actually some testimony for one of the bills that was divided in two, and they got to have the first bit of testimony, and then they did the clause by clause review, and then there was more testimony coming after, but after that process had been done. So I'm not quite sure what they would be able to do with that information, right? Um, and in this particular case, if people wanted to have an extra 2 weeks, Parliament to sit an extra 2 weeks so that they could really hear from witnesses and really go through a clause by clause and make sure they get it right, um, nobody can see what the rush is, and nobody from the government side can actually explain what the rush is, why that needs to be done this quickly, this fast, and why an extra 2 weeks would somehow be so detrimental to the objectives being pursued that it just cannot be done. So the concept of running the room, running Canada a bit like a CEO more than a prime minister, while we may have needed more CEO energy, a country is not a corporation. So you can't do that. And when you're writing laws, um, a lot of people are turning around saying, well, I'm not worried about Mark Carney, or I'm not worried about David Eby because he has two controversial laws as well, or I'm not worried about Doug Ford with his stuff. The point is not about being worried about the guy who's writing the laws if you support the guy, but every law should be written keeping in mind that this very same law could be used eventually by the party you deem to be most dangerous. And therefore, the law should not be first written for your own ease, but written in such a way that when you lose government, because all parties eventually do, that the party that succeeds cannot use that same law in ways that would have you screaming if you were on the opposition benches. Some of these laws legitimately could benefit from some extra time to get the wording precisely right. And it doesn't seem that the prime minister is particularly open to that. Um, right now, the laws are not passed and the consequences of them are not being felt. But once they are, and once they do, there's a lot of people that might not be happy with the full results based on the way they are written at present as they're being studied. And it really would behoove the prime minister to take his foot off the gas to maybe add a week or two to actually hear the concerns and show that he's hearing the concerns and be willing to make some changes because that attitude over time grates on people and can wear thin. So it's something to watch out for. Um, Again, extremely competent man, has a plan, knows where he's going. But you, in a corporation, you might be able to sit at a boardroom, and go, okay, this is where we're going, team. We're doing it this way. Make it happen. In a nation where you have to govern for everyone, not just your shareholders, sometimes you need to pump the brakes a little on that and realize that you need to maybe just bring more than the boardroom on board to get this done successfully if you want it to last. So, yeah, some things to watch for here, um, because that's like I said, uh, once the tide starts turning on you, media wise and public opinion, that particular stance usually accelerates a fall. So, just some things to keep in mind because uh, one must always be vigilant and one must first always keep eyes on their own team and be willing to call out their own team. All right, kids and cubs. That's the end of this episode, short and sweet, like I said, of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We love it when you do, especially when you add a little something of your own to it. We appreciate all of that. If you would like to not miss an episode because you are out there doing democracy and you're on the go, well, hey, you don't have to. Thanks to the Ray Girl who sponsors our pod page. If you scan this QR code, if you're watching, it will bring you right there. Or if you are listening, podpage.com/the true north eager beaver with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you click subscribe, we have something. When we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to your podcast feed. If you would like to help us in other ways, kids and cubs, well, hey, kids Elaine and Cassie will be beckoning you to surf on down to the True North Eager Beaver YouTube page. That QR code that just appeared in the corner there will bring you right there if you scan it. And if you go there and if you click our buttons, because we have three of them. Oh, yeah, three times the fun. Like, share, and subscribe. Click them, flick them, lick them. It makes us so happy and it helps us with the algorithm. And if you would like to help us in other ways, for example, with a contribution to the Eager Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund, mm, so that you may keep your beaver moist, because a moist beaver is a happy beaver. Well, then, that QR code that just appeared in the corner is the one that you scan. And if you are listening, you go to ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver and leave us a little something in our tip jar when the coinage makes that clinging sound on the bottom. Ooh, that brings us such joy. So thank you for all of your support and encouragement. And I would like to, I know we mentioned a comment from a Kit T yesterday who had given us a donation, but Kit T had another comment for us that was really nice. And I'd like to read it here saying, "Hi, guys. I'm not able to visit your morning podcast as often as I would like, but every time I'm able to meet at the lodge, I come away having learned something about politics, community, humanity, and what it means to be on Team Canada in sports, in the arts, and in the trying times of global unrest. Thanks for your wit, grounded sense of self, thorough research, and willingness to be transparent and humble. Good for you both. Here comes 1 million views." Um, Thank you, Kitty. And another person had given us a compliment stating that these are sources that people should consult to get good information, and included us in there along with the the Walrus and the Nunsakiat News and CBC and a whole bunch of other publications and enterprises that have way more followers and way more solid reputation developed over such a long time that we were just absolutely thrilled and um, uh, slightly incredulous to be included in such wonderful company. But the person said, I like consistency over time, and you guys provide it. So it's not about followers, it's about quality, and you guys definitely deserve to be on that list. So for the person who said that about us, thank you. That provoked a real warm fuzzy. Because democracy is something that you do, kids and cubs, do remember that if you are in Alberta, June 23rd is a by-election day. There are 3 by-elections. So please make your plan to vote, and please bring friends along with you to vote, because friends don't let friends do democracy alone. Words of wisdom, kids and cubs. Um, like I'm devoid of wisdom today. So I'm going to pass on the wisdom because I'm looking at the clock and I gotta go. Kids and cubs, please be kind to and gentle with yourselves. There will be no Easter egg today, and please watch our socials because there might be double beaver today. All right? Amour, bisous, and we will see you soon. Now, on the count of 3, kids and cubs, may I please hear you all together in unison say, "Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock." 1, 2, 3. Oh, yes. That somebody added some vibrato. Nice. Here you You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music.